Welcome everyone to episode 124 of Raw Sport. My name is Ahmed El Houli. We are back with the man himself, Mr. Roberto Diaz. How are you, sir? How's things?
I'm good. I'm good. Thank you, Amat, for having me. I always enjoy my time here with you. I know that the minutes turn into hours, but we always enjoy it and have a good chat.
You're part of the furniture here at Raw Sport, Roberto. It's an
Appreciate
absolute
that.
pleasure, mate. Roberto, massive weekend of boxing. Lots happened. We saw the introduction of TKO staged events. We saw the fight, what was labeled as the fight of the century. Huge occasion in any way you would like to put it. Canelo v Crawford. Before we get into the actual fight, let's go through the week leading into it. Let's talk about the events that transpired from the press conference. We had esteemed boxing journalist Sean Zattel go up and ask Dana the hard questions. We had at the weigh-in the fun, the vibrant atmosphere, the Canelo fans packing the stands. We haven't seen a weigh-in that packed in a very long time. Then we had the stadium itself, over 70,000 people, the third highest gate in history. They packed out the stadium. They brought out the stars. Vegas was alive again. And here we are, the week after. Let's go.
Well, it was a tremendous event. I mean, anytime Mexican independence, Canelo fight weekend in Vegas, it doesn't get bigger. It doesn't get bigger. And when you have a dance partner in front of you that's not just here for a big payday, he's actually here to win. I said it before the fight. Crawford was I said it before. He's a generational great fighter, one that you can put in different eras, and he would be competitive, which you cannot say of many fighters from today's era. And he showed it. He showed it. But as far as the event, for a new company to do something this big, you don't see that quite often. A promoter debuting on this stage, and I say a promoter because he's boxing. It's not UFC. TKO, it was their first event when it came to boxing. Sure, do they have boxing people around and this and that? Of course they do. But to do an event of this magnitude, props to them, right? For something this big, and with the outcome, not fight result, but the outcome of the stadium, that the people attended, that the people showed up and they responded. That I have to give credit to Canelo, because he always brings the fans. As you said, in that weigh-in, you could see the atmosphere. You could see the Mexican fans supporting Canelo. You saw it at the fight. Star-studded, absolutely. Netflix being involved had a lot of the stars there. You'd like to see that because it brings back, for my generation, that feeling of a huge event, not just a fight, an event when it's star-studded. Jack Nicholson, and I saw Magic Johnson. You see the celebrities that only come out when it's something big, and we saw it on Saturday night.
Netflix, boxing, we've seen it with Jake Paul and Mike Tyson. They produced crazy numbers, and you can understand why. That was the balance, the coming of the two different generations, the upcoming and the old. Everyone tuned in. 41 million plus people tuned in to Canelo Alvarez versus Terence Crawford. A monumental step for boxing. I think I, I personally believe that having the follow up on this event, Jake Paul versus Tank, that's also going to do some crazy numbers. Are we seeing a new path for boxing? Can we potentially see more and more of these outside these mega fights from what you've been hearing?
Well, what I like is just the mere fact that it's on Netflix. Because, as you just said, um, this was a fight more so for the diehard boxing fans, not for a crossover. Of course, Canelo is the face. People know Canelo outside of boxing, but I don't know if people outside of boxing really know or knew Crawford. And to have 41 million tune in and watch, it could only grow because I think, as you will agree, Crawford now has a bandwagon for fans, rightfully so. He earned it. So, for the good of boxing, and now going into a Jake Paul and Tank exhibition, what have you, I see the younger generation being given the opportunity to tune in, to watch, to fall in love with the sport like we did when we were young, and then become fans. If we keep doing these pay-per-views, or taking these smaller fights into a pay-per-view level, it's never going to grow. And that's where we've been seeing a downside. But if we take these big events and put it on for everybody to watch, it could only grow. They could only get that bug. Once you get that bug, boxing bug, you're hooked forever.
Absolutely. What are your thoughts on the pre-fight events? The show that happened a couple of nights before at the that famous hotel, the Fountain Le Bleu, I think it's called. Yeah,
Fontainebleau, there
yeah.
was a world title fight. Um, I was there only for the main event. I showed up just for the main event to support Camacho, who is with the Miguel Cotto Promotions. I've known him for years. Um, World title fight. It The atmosphere was different, but I got to say I liked it. I walked in there and it seemed like I was like maybe in a garage type, uh, graffiti on the wall, all production. People standing outside the corral area, bleacher area, like, because it's a theater. I liked it. I liked it. It reminds me a little bit of what we were used to do here in LA at the Belasco Theater, DJ playing, club type atmosphere while you're watching boxing. I really enjoyed it. Again, I was only there for the main event. It was 2 rounds. Camacho came up short, but I was in and out. But just from what I saw production wise, for that level of card, or for the smaller, not even a world title fight, uh, I think it works. Many years ago, HBO did something like that, where it was a DJ and playing music and younger fighters matching up, maybe to hit that hip type atmosphere. But I think it could work. I think it could work.
What are your thoughts on this new format of press conference where the journalists line up, they ask their questions on the mic? We saw pretty much a UFC style presentation, right?
I don't like that. I don't like that. I
Yeah,
wasn't at the press conference. I did not
yeah.
attend the press conference. Um, I stayed with Mauricio Suleiman, president of WBC. We were at a sports book at the Fontainebleau watching the football games. But just from seeing it on social media, um, I am the old school. Raise your hand, get the mic over to you. I don't know, just the lineup. I don't know. I'm not used to it. I could see where it came from. You got UFC coming into boxing, bringing some of the UFC um,
Formats.
customs and
Yeah.
formats correct. And I think, again, it was their first event as boxing. There was a lot of in the events that I was at, media that I didn't even know. Maybe they were from UFC. I don't know.
Yeah.
But I didn't see the traditional uh, boxing media that I know from many, many years. So I think, again, first event, there's going to be pros and cons. And I think from here, they can learn and grow.
Well, speaking of media, we saw a lot of MMA media cover the sport, which could be a good thing, no problem. The only thing that concerns me personally is that the boxing media that's covered the sport for so many years should get that, not preferential treatment, but some sort of loyalty. You know what I mean? Because
A hundred percent.
at the end of the day, these outlets have covered the sport for many, many years. And I understand where TKO and Turkey are taking the sport and the direction they're taking it. I mean, they brought back some of that legacy media through Max Kellerman. He's a HBO legacy guy who was around for a long, long time. I totally get that. But the outlets, like one to mention that wasn't there was Boxing Scene and a few others. These are all boxing legacy outlets that have covered the sport for over 20 years.
Ahmad,
And
there was media from Mexico that has covered Canelo for many years, and they were either denied credentials or last minute. Okay, we're going to approve you, and you go all the way. I mean, these are guys. I know one for a fact that's been in boxing for over 30 years, so covering boxing, not sports, boxing, and he's a legend in Mexico, respected in Mexico. And to find out like a day before, oh no, you're not credentialed. What? Eventually he got in, he got credentialed, but uh, it, again, there's when they're new, maybe they don't. Obviously, they're dealing with a different combat sport, and I think you do have to at least have somebody, whoever's in charge of credentials, bring them in from boxing so they know those outlets that are so important when it comes to boxing. Yes, bring in some outlets for MMA that you're used to that can start pushing boxing into that new fan base. But don't forget your traditional, your old that's been doing it for 30 years. That's disrespectful. So again, um, being the first event, there's opportunity for growth.
yeah, the media passes were you had to go through the UFC press portal. So it was all done through the UFC because I actually tried myself and we didn't get it. So basically, what we're seeing is a transition, which is fine, no problem. As long as we learn and we adapt and we grow moving forward, the industry will accept you. The industry will get around you and support you. But the most important thing is don't forget the old guard that have covered the sport for many, many years. Because if you do that, it won't end well. They will not, the fans will not embrace you. And we've seen that. We've seen that.
100%.
Yeah.
100%. Without the media, without the fans, promoters, and even the boxers will struggle because we
100%.
defend in the business, not only the fighter, but the promotional side, we depend on the consumer.
Absolutely. Okay. There was a lot of talk and controversy around sanctioning belts. The sanctioning organizations presenting their belts at the end of the main event, which was a huge platform. The WBC created a ring and these limited edition belts and gold, and it was flamboyant, and like the presentation was on show. And during fight week, Mauricio Suleiman, who's the president of WBC, was quoted that they're going to need 2 to 3 security guards from stopping me from going into the ring, which I liked. I liked that because he stood his ground and he said, "This is our sport. We've been doing this longer than anyone. Nobody's going to come in and tell us what to do," which is a big A plus. What transpired? Because so I don't want to get too political. I don't want to put nobody in a bad position. But TKO's role here coming into the sport is they want to cut out these sanctioning bodies, right? And what we discovered this week is that Dana White went on to say, "I'm going to have my own contender league, and Turkey Al Sheikh now is going to do all the big fights." So we're seeing a bit of adjustment there, which is good, from my opinion, because that means that the sport is speaking, the crowd is speaking, and they've pressured them into moving that way. What did you hear on the ground?
Well, I basically heard exactly what you're saying. And my opinion on it is, look, you come into the sport new, into a new sport for you that's been around for many years. You can't change things overnight. You got to come in a little humble. You got to come in, okay, this is the way you guys do things. Okay, this is the way we're going to do things. I have no problem with this league that's going to form, because I've said it in the past, that gives more fighters that are not currently in position to make world title fights, or to fight for world title fights, or to make a decent amount of money, because they're not signed with a major promoter or what have you. They're free agents. So they're knocking on doors left and right. This gives them an opportunity to become the TKO champion, to become a household name in this league. At that point, in that league, eliminate all the sanction bodies, because that's what you are intending to do. But in our league, if you want to call it the world of boxing, how it is today, our fighters, our young fighters coming up, got into boxing for a couple reasons. Most importantly, and number one, you ask any young fighter, why do you want to be a boxer? Because I want to be a world champion. I want to hold the WBC world title. I want to hold the WBA world title. I want to hold the WBO world title, the one that my idol held. Then they start talking about money. But the primary reason is because they want to be world champions of these belts that their idols, role models before them held. So you can't eliminate that. We have to respect the organizations that have been here much longer than a new company, a new promoter has.
Absolutely. And these sanctioning bodies, where are they going to fit into all this based off what we saw last week?
Well, I think now the gloves are off. I think everybody knows what everybody's position is, and I think again, the league does their thing. Boxing continues doing what they've always done. I don't think there's going to be a change there. The league is one thing, the rest of boxing's another thing. Saturday night wasn't part of the league, so their rules that they want to put in and embrace shouldn't apply to this, because this is our world of boxing. Canelo was the undisputed world champion who held the sanction bodies belts, and Crawford was going after those belts and obtained them to make history, not to win a belt that nobody knows, or that in the future, 15 years from now, when you make through your league new champions that maybe become role models and become very famous, and become younger generations may want to shift and say, I never saw Canelo, I never saw Crawford, but you know what? I want to win that TKO belt, or whatever they call it, um, because the fighter I grew up watching had that one. So that's where we got to see where it goes, and how it, where it takes off.
Awesome. That week, the California State Athletic Commission held um, a public occasion, a public meeting
Meeting.
based
Hmm.
on their support to the amendment that is proposed by TKO to the Muhammad Ali Act.
Hmm.
Huge backlash. Their forum almost pretty much collapsed online. There was that much backlash. They stopped. They paused that support.
Hmm.
Now that's CSAC alone, right? So
Hmm.
we've already seen that pushback to come in and try and amend the sport. What's the true motivation here? Why do we need to amend this act?
Well, I think, one, I'm not totally against amending it if it's for
Mhm.
the better of the boxer. Because remember, the Ali Act is intended for the good of the boxer,
Yeah,
disclosing the promoter's uh, income, the promoter's revenue, so that it's more of a fair split when it comes time to payouts. Um, the sanction fees not having control. I'm sorry, the organization, sanction bodies not having a control over the fighters, the promotion, so that they don't control the rankings in that form of what a promoter can control the rankings, right?
Hmm.
By eliminating or making amendments in the league, you can exclude and then now have more control over as a promoter in the rankings. If it's your league, and it's very simple, who's top to 1 to 10, who's been beaten who, and you do your ranking. Okay, you're fighting for the TKO belt without a sanction body. I don't know if they have to go as far as making changes to the Ali Act. It's your league. You don't need the Ali Act. But if
But
they're bringing in professional fighters, not now a new league that has a different combat, it has to apply. So, again, if it's to better the reform, to improve it, I saw a couple things that make it sound very good and enticing. Is some kind of medical care for them after. That's great because
for
keep in
sure.
mind, a lot of the fighters, not a lot of the fighters are self-contracted.
Hmm.
So they're not employed. So they have to have their own insurance. Most of the time, these young fighters, 4, 6, 8 rounders, they can't afford it, especially out here in the States. And if you're fighting in other countries, who knows how they get the medical care.
It's the same thing everywhere, pretty much. I don't think there is a country that's actually covering that medical insurance. And
And that's where the sanction bodies at times, see, a lot of the fans don't know that. A lot of times, sanction bodies will have the promoter, well, the state commissions obligate the promoter to have an insurance that covers any injury of a fighter up to a certain amount per event. But then there is sanction bodies. I know for a fact for the WBC where fighters have been injured and there's a life insurance from every fight, even if it's not a WBC fight on that card. Everybody on that card is covered under the life insurance. So if somebody's injured, dies, there is a policy there to take care of them. I mean, obviously, there's no price to that person's life, but there is what the sanction bodies do. What's going to happen there? So,
well, yeah. Go on. Sorry.
so there is room. There's always room for updates. When was the last time when it was, enforced?
Yeah.
So there is room for updates to grow, but not to take away.
So if we're looking at this objectively, there could be good progress on these amendments if they go in the right direction, as long as they don't go the other way and take the rights of the fighter, like we see the monopoly on the other side of the fence, which is the UFC. And I'm
Correct, a
saying,
hundred
and,
percent.
and I'm saying this respectively, as esteemed boxing journalist Sean Zattel highlighted, they have multiple lawsuits, which one they've already lost $375 million, which is we're not going to go into that because it is what it is.
Hmm.
That's been already delivered, decided on, and people have moved on. But there's also multiple others. So as a sport, we don't need that. We need reforms that will improve the sport, the medical insurance, life after boxing, the treatment of fighters during their careers, some sort of financial literacy education to sort of make sure that these guys don't run out of money like so many of them do.
Yeah,
Like I
some
was,
type of yeah,
yeah,
I love that. I've thought about some kind of education of financial, how to invest, how to, and you see a lot of fighters do it. But what happens is on the other side, come invest your money with me. I have a great investment for you. Is such higher educated and can smoothly talk the fighter that he'll do the investment thinking he's doing what he's supposed to be doing, but it's not a wise investment for him, and they end up losing as well there. So yes, I mean there has to be further education on how to do the stock market, how to do the real estate market, how to invest your money wisely, even if it's just in CDs and it's not giving a high percentage, because if it's too high and too good to be true, most of the time it is. But at least there's a guarantee. You hear a couple stories here and there that certain fighters don't even live off their earnings, they live off just the interest of what they've earned. So by the time they retire, that money's doubled up or tripled up, or whatever it's been there. But that's great to hear, because that retirement for the next 20, 30 years after boxing should help them live comfortable. Where we hear more than 9 out of 10 times the opposite. How that fighter, once he retires, he either has to come back to fight again for money, or ends up broke, or ends up, you know, working odd
Mailman.
jobs or whatever. Yeah, I saw that one a couple days ago, and
Yeah.
and I don't want the message to be that's below, because
No,
hey,
no, no.
it's an honest job, an honest living, driving an Uber. But what I do want to express is, it's not that it's a bad thing that they're doing, but after risking their lives and making millions or thousands, not in all cases millions, you wish they didn't have to fall back
Exactly.
on working at a fast food restaurant. Or I remember the case of one of the top Olympian, world champion, not Olympian, sorry, gold medalist, world champion, and working bagging groceries at a grocery store. So you hate to hear these stories, because it is sad, after putting their lives on the line and giving us so much glory.
Because what people don't understand is that these fighters, their bodies, after they finish their careers, they've taken a huge toll on their bodies. Their bodies are shot, most of them, which is why they stopped fighting in the first place. Otherwise, most of them would continue because they love it.
Absolutely. It's you ask a fighter. Look, I don't think anybody walks into that ring and says, "Man, I miss getting hit in the head." I don't
Yeah.
think anybody does miss that. They miss the walk to the ring. They miss the love of the fans. They miss that adrenaline. It's a one man sport. It's not a team sport. It is me against my opponent. But when the body tells you it's too late, and you hear it a lot. I remember Alexis Arguello once said, "Your mind tells you move, and your body says 3 minutes, 3 seconds later, like, oh, you were supposed to move. It's too late. You already got hit." So
Yeah.
where your reflexes are before, not getting hit, and all of a sudden, like, okay, here it comes, move up, got hit, and then you move. You're 3, 4, 5 steps behind. That's when, and then you're right. The hands start hurting. Uh, Fighters that have always been known to take a punch all of a sudden can't take a punch anymore. The legs, the knees, that the wear and tear, because it's not just the fights. Before every one fight, about 100 rounds of sparring in that camp. How many rounds, or how many miles of running in that same camp? How many minutes on the heavy bag, and how many rounds on the speed bag, and how many, on the jump rope? And there's a lot of wear and tear in these athletes, plus add the fights and the abuse they're taking outside, if they're not taking care of themselves, if they're not being a Bernard Hopkins, living a very clean and healthy life. And that's when you start seeing the effects, even at an early age.
And we've seen many of it. I mean, a lot of many retired fighters go down the path of looking for a way out of that pain, and they resort to drugs, which puts them in deeper holes. And their ending, unfortunately, is very, very unfortunate. Um, we'll move on. The main event was everybody was what everybody was waiting for. We had a fight on the undercard. Lester Martinez versus Billy stole the show. They went at it. They left it all in the ring. What a fight! And then I found the structure a bit odd. We had a young kid from Saudi who nobody's really heard of open the card. Then we had in Billy Martinez. Then we had Callum Walsh and Vargas, which was also a bit of an average fight. And then we had the main event. So, what are your thoughts on the card structure? Some of the fights that were there. We're just talking about the main card here, the televised card. And
I think
who stood out to you most
I think
from that card?
what we saw in the structure is pretty standard, and I'll tell you why. Number one, on your undercard, you're gonna put fights that on paper look good. Look, you had four undefeated fighters, if I recall correctly, in the two fights prior to the main event.
Mm-hmm.
However, you have fights that are not too expensive because you're spending so much on your main event. That's the same format that we would use on a pay-per-view. You put fights that look attractive, that you think are going to be competitive, that are still inexpensive in for say because you're spending so much on the pay-per-view on the main event, or because the main event is going to take the majority of the expense.
Roberto, I have to
Mhm.
stop you there. Do we talk about expenses when Turkey's involved?
Hey, when the money, look, when you have to make at the end of the day, yes, he's doing things that we've never even dreamt of or seen before in our lifetime, and probably won't see for many, many more years outside of him. But at the end of the day, any business has to have a budget, because if you shell out more than you bring in, eventually, uh, it can't last forever. You can't spend more than you make. So obviously, the structure is that to try to keep the expenses down or lower. Otherwise, you'd have five main events. I think they've realized that long cards are not needed. 10, 12 fight are not needed. You're not People show up for the main event. You saw the I mean, obviously this is a massive stadium, but you saw it looked quite a bit empty, and even gives you the idea of like, is this even going to fill up in 30, 40 minutes? But right before the main event, I don't think you could see an empty seat. So it shows that the fans are out
Actually,
there.
actually, Roberto, I want to add something to that point. So traditionally, to those that don't know, in Vegas, the fights are held in casinos
Hmm.
that have hotels, entertainment, all within. It's a precinct.
Hmm.
Everything is there to keep the the consumer in one place, spending money, don't go nowhere.
Hmm.
And the undercard is not really watched. Everybody leaves the pools, leaves the bars, leaves the restaurants, and goes just before the main event, right? But
100%.
this was at a stadium. So how'd they manage that? Because
I,
the first and second fight, there wasn't many people in the stadium.
hmm. Hmm.
Then all of a sudden, before the main event, when they went pitch black, there was phone lights everywhere.
Yeah, yeah,
It
yeah.
was so.
I'm
I
still
mean,
getting goosebumps. I'm
yeah.
still
So
getting
take us through
goosebumps.
that. Take us through that because I was genuinely curious how they were going to do that.
You're absolutely right. When you're in the casino, your consumer is either having dinner before the main event,
Yeah.
or at the tables, or showering, getting ready, or at the spa, just, getting ready for the main event. You traditionally get there right before the main event, right before the anthems, co-main events ending. But now you're at the venue, at the stadium. People are going from all the different casinos over. I really think there was a lot of people in the corridors, at the concessions, in different VIP sections, maybe having drinks, green rooms, just not in the stadium, but already have arrived.
So
There
so they
had to
had
been
so they had all that outside basically.
inside and outside. Correct.
Okay. Okay.
Correct. And because you have the masses, look, I heard from more than one person after, as big as the stadium, They've had the Super Bowl. There was chaos when it came to the women showing up with purses. And oh, you can't take that purse in. And that's custom in football games. That's normal. You have to
Okay.
have a clear purse. They could see what's inside. You can't have a regular purse. So
Wow.
they have lockers. What it could also be a great business because the lockers aren't free. Oh, sorry, you can't come in with that purse. You got to $20, whatever it is, to rent a locker because you're not going to go back to your hotel. And they know that. And a lot of these people aren't driving their car. Let me put it in the trunk. So what do? Just pay for the locker, hurry up because the main event's starting. But what I heard after, which was un I mean, I it was chaos. Chaos. I've seen pictures, I've seen videos. When people came back out to get their purses, they were handing out purses to the wrong people. People were leaving with the wrong purse. They were pushing, shoving, security grabbing people, throwing them down, handcuffing. I mean, it was bad, really bad. So again, I think going in, even though they've had the football, they've had the Super Bowl. I was there to watch the Niners and the Chiefs a couple years ago. They usually have big crowds on Monday night with the Raiders playing. I don't know if they were prepared for, oh, it's boxing. Oh, this is going to be smaller. I don't know what security was thinking because next thing you know, it just like people didn't know where your seats were or ushers was like, no, ask him, ask it. But yes, going back to that, within minutes, right before the main event, it was packed. And we knew it would be because, again, Canelo fight weekend, Mexican independence, the fans were going to go there and support.
Boxing crowd, they're very fancy when they go to their events. They really dress for the occasion. They take it serious.
Vegas. Vegas.
Yeah,
I think
yeah,
it's more Vegas.
yeah, for sure. And
Hmm.
I don't think they did their research when it came to the sort of consumer that was coming. So, but that's interesting. So we go into the main event. The, the fight starts as everyone expected. They were sussing each other out. Take us through it.
You know, before the fight, I made it loud and clear that I had a lot of respect for Crawford. Again, I told Crawford a couple years ago, Bud, you remind me a lot of Marvin Hagler. He's that special of a fighter. Um, I said it earlier today at the beginning. I rarely can say I will match up a fighter of this generation and match him with one of that previous generation and have the one of the newer fighter beat the older fighter. And Bud is a fighter that a few years ago it came up on social media where, hey, how would Bud do against Aaron Pryor? And
Hmm.
Aaron Pryor was a beast. He was a little machine, nonstop, not just came at you and threw punches until he knocked you out. And I've never liked those fantasy matches of who would have done this and who would have done that because who cares? We were never going to be able to see it. But that one caught my attention because I was like, wow, that's a pretty good fight. Oh, wait a minute. Let's see how it goes. And in my mind, I'm breaking it through and I see Bud stopping Pryor. And that
Wow.
was the first time that, you know, that had really happened in me matching a fighter of a younger generation beating one of the greats from a past generation. So the more and more I looked and saw Bud and saw him fight, I said, man, this guy reminds me of Hagler, not only because he could switch both stands and dominate both stands, but a little bit of a chip on the shoulder, a little bit of feeling like he's never getting his just due. Hagler was always fighting to get that respect. And I said one thing that was very clear in this fight that I said, stop using the weight narrative. This is not going to be determined on weight. This is going to be the better fighter beating the better fighter. And of course, I was wrong. I thought It wasn't going to be because Canelo's too big. It's just going to be because Canelo's too good.
Yeah.
Well, if that's the way I saw it going in, I have to see it the same way coming out. And that means it wasn't a weight thing. In fact, Bud looked at time. I mean, he looked bigger. He looked bigger. He looked bigger, and it
Yeah.
didn't affect his mobility. He's not a runner to begin with. He's not a fast fighter to begin with. He has good timing. Miguel Cotto wasn't a fast fighter, but he had great timing. Bud has great timing. He's a great counterpuncher. And as the rounds went on, he got more comfortable and warmed up to the punches of Canelo and just look, he amazed me. He fought a brilliant fight. As I was watching it, I know I said he reminds me of Hagler, but in this case, his fight against Canelo reminded me of Sugar Ray Leonard beating Hagler.
Mm.
You know, it was a smaller guy coming in and maybe stealing a little bit of the rounds at the beginning and then closing the round. More active and look, at the end of the day, at the end of the fight, all props to him. He earned it. He was daring. He dared to be great. I know we say that a lot, but you have to give the man his respect. Oh, you can't go up in two-weight class. Why not? That's the beauty of boxing. If you can believe, you can achieve. And if you can dare to be great, nothing's impossible. And this man is now a three-division, three-time undisputed and undefeated. Wow. Wow. I mean, what can you say about that, you know? And I think Canelo doesn't lose much. I mean, he lost his titles, yeah. But to lose to a great like this, there's no shame. I mean, you lost to one of the great fighters of our generation. So it's you learn from it, you move on. He's given Mexico, he's given himself, he's given us as fans such memorable fights and such great fights and such more highs than lows. So it's like, hey, move on.
Absolutely. Do you think we'll see a rematch?
If I'm Bud, obviously I can't say no because if Turkey comes and says, here's an envelope that's too good to pass up, I think so. But if I'm Bud, I'm like, ah, no. I mean, I done what you guys said I wouldn't do. Almost like, you know, I want to. If I'm him, I retire. But again, that check, that bag at the end
He's
could come,
38 years old, right? So
and you've
yeah,
achieved three
everything.
division. You've achieved everything, and it's so much. It's. I was talking to. I was 2 days before the fight. Um, Andre Ward. I heard him on a podcast with El Gallo, Gabe Rosado, and they were talking about the itch and the coming back and how come you never did it. There's a discipline. There's
Mm.
how many fighters can we name probably on one hand that have retired undefeated in their primes? And Mayweather, Andre Ward, Finito Lopez, those are the three that I can think of at the top level and retired undefeated. And of course, they probably got the itch every one day, yes, one day, no. But discipline kept them out because it's hard to say goodbye when you're doing everything right because one more, one more, one more. And then you
Yeah.
lose. And then you lose because of that one more.
Yeah.
So it's like this is the perfect time to say, I'm out. 42
Uh,
and 0.
very high ending too. Um, one point,
Calzaghe. Sorry, Calzaghe. Joe
Calzaghe as well.
Calzaghe is
Yeah.
the other one.
Yeah, absolutely. So one down point from this fight is, I believe, is traditionally Mexican fans in Mexico would see all Canelo fights free on TV, on Azteca TV, from my understanding. This time Netflix said, no, you got to watch it on Netflix and pay for it. And as we know, in Mexico, a lot of the population doesn't have that disposable income. Is that something that was mentioned during fight week in boxing circles, where potentially that could change moving forward for those Mexican fans who I believe are the ones that have carried the sport in the last 20 years?
100%. Again, we said it earlier, without the fans, promoters or fighters don't achieve the greatness they do. Because if you have nobody tuning in and nobody supporting you, you're going to fight in front of 300 people. How big can you really get?
Exactly.
That was bad. Obviously, the fans in Mexico missed out a lot, and I'm not saying everyone, like you said, there is fans in Mexico that can afford Netflix, but there's a fan in Mexico that has been the diehard fan since day one, following not just Canelo, boxing in general, but yes, mainly the main number one fighter in Mexico, Canelo, that says, okay, do I watch Canelo and pay this subscription on Netflix and not feed the family for a week? That's a big choice that they have to make. So most of them are going to decide not to watch Canelo or not to watch boxing. And I think for the reasons that it happened, I don't see it happening ever again. There was some miscommunication, is from what I've heard. And hopefully that gets corrected and we'll never see that again, because even before TV Azteca, it was Televisa,
Yeah.
and Canelo has always had, something that's incredible is for an individual to have even a higher rating than the Mexican national soccer team. And that's
Wow.
because when Canelo fought, the fans tuned in because it was free for them to watch.
Yeah, he's one step short of a god in Mexico. Like let's be quite honest. And Mexican fans have made him who he is today, and he knows that, and he says that. He acknowledges that, which is the hard part. So anyway,
No,
Canelo Alvarez.
and I'll go a little further just so
Yeah,
you know. And this is, look, it hit the heart. It hit some buttons. I understand the fans at times because I read some comments after on social media. UFC doesn't do anthems. They go straight into the fight.
yeah,
And I like that on certain events, certain fights. And I'm not saying it, oh, you're saying because you're Mexican. No. Mexican independence, you needed the anthems. You needed the Mexican anthem. And they pulled it. And you know what Canelo did? He had it in his dressing room. So the national anthem was played in Canelo's dressing room for him and his team, and for the love and respect to Mexico. So
which is
that was
which
touching.
is poor, if you ask me, from the television networks and those that were organizing the fights, because everyone knows the two biggest days in boxing are, I can't remember the exact day in May, Cinco de
Cinco de
Mayo,
Mayo, which
and
is an and Mexican independence,
Independence Day.
which is even
Exactly.
bigger for Mexico.
And you know what's beautiful about that? They embrace everyone. They embrace Floyd Mayweather. Floyd Mayweather made those 2 dates his staple dates. He went up against everyone. And Canelo then came after him and he did the same. So let's not forget that. Let's keep that
No,
respect.
and as fans, believe it or not, there's always in Canelo fights, it's like who's gonna play the anthem and who's gonna
Yeah,
walk
yeah,
out with
yeah,
him and
yeah,
who's gonna sing. There's that also enjoyment because that's also a surprise for them. Some of their favorite singers, we've had some of the biggest singers
yeah.
traditionally come out and walk Canelo out, and even in Miami, J Balbi. I mean, because it was Miami and it was more Latino than Mexican, so. And to take that away last minute because no, we don't do that. It's like, okay, now it's not a what 2 minutes it would have taken,
Yeah, exactly.
but it's a respect, especially because of the date. If this would have been a fight in June and it's
That's
still a
fine.
Canelo fight
Yeah, yeah.
and he's fighting Crawford and there's no, no problem. But this fight was around Mexican Independence Day, out of respect.
Absolutely. Absolutely. The industry had a massive weekend. It was the high of highs, but then shortly after, we had the lows of lows. The Ricky Haddon passed away. News came out the next day that Ricky Haddon had passed away, and he was a very close friend of yours. Um, Tell us what you heard. Give us some great stories of Ricky, and just get into it. Really,
It is not just boxing lost. Um, Manchester lost a friend. Um, the people that knew him lost somebody very special because he was very special. I think the reason that Ricky had the following he had was he was one of those blokes that everybody had a story to talk about, and it was a fun story, a genuine story. It wasn't that of a celebrity. I don't even think Ricky considered himself as popular, and I mean he knew, of course, everywhere he went people loved him, but I don't think he ever really considered himself, I'm at a different level than you are. He could walk into a pub, have a beer, or play darts with the next door guy, whoever it was. And I think that's what made him special. That's what had Ricky fans, not necessarily were boxing fans. They were Ricky fans. They came from Man City soccer, they came from knowing him, or they came from being boxing fans. All together, that's what created Hatton Mania. And I think that's an era, and I said it when it was over, we will never see again, because after him, look at all the British fighters that have come after, and AJ, Calzaghe, uh, so many more, and great fighters, but they didn't have that army that Ricky had. It is very tragic. I haven't heard much. I've messaged back and forth with family and friends. Um, but I do want the fans and this I say to the family, Cal Campbell, um, Matthew, Carol, Ray, Paul Speak, who devoted his life to Ricky. I mean, all the family, the girls. We're very fortunate to have met him, to have had him in our lives, to have given us so many moments of laughs. And let's always remember that. And fly high, champ. Love you, Richard.
there you go, and we'll bring it all to an end with such beautiful words in tribute to the legend, the man, Ricky Haddon. Roberto, thank you very much for joining me on the show. Thank you to all that tuned in. Take care, everyone. We'll catch you
Thank
all
you,
on the
pal.
next episode of Overall Sport. Take care, everyone.